College football award season is upon us. Jaden Daniels, Pate State material, won the Heisman Trophy last night. He is who I would have voted for, so I have no problem with Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman Trophy. But I got a bigger question for you, and the question is rhetorical. Who's voting on awards in college football? Who should be voting for awards in college football? Do the people who are voting, by and large, even watch a lot of college football? And are you satisfied? I went on Twitter today. I took a very scientific poll. This is as scientific as it gets, people. And I asked, are you satisfied with how college football awards are voted on? Jesse, what are the results even at, by the way? The last time I checked, here we go. We have an update. Are you satisfied with how awards are voted on in this sport? 83.8% of you say no. Now, I know those of you who actually understand scientific data, research, and whatnot, you would say, that's a loaded question. Not to mention, people always think they're dissatisfied, so there's going to be a natural public lean towards the no. I know that. I'm baking all that in. So let's just pretend it was 70% no. That's still a super-duper majority, which is a political term. Super-duper majority. You rarely see it on a political map, but we have it on the college football map. And that's why I have a feeling nothing will change. Why? Because most of you want it to change, and that's just never the way this sport works, is it? Let me tell you what doesn't bother me. Apparently, a lot of things bother a lot of you. I want to start our talk tonight by telling you what doesn't bother me. Whether it's the Thorpe or the Biletnikoff or the Heisman Trophy, I don't care if my guy doesn't win. That doesn't bother me. My guy happened to win the Heisman Trophy this year. I would have voted for Jaden Daniels based on what I think is important when we're crowning the most outstanding player in college football. I don't mind so much if my guy doesn't win. If Michael Penix would have taken this thing home last night, it wouldn't have been the biggest travesty or injustice in the world to me. I don't even mind when I see the results tabulated and handed out, and there are outstanding ballots. For example, someone voted J.J. McCarthy as their number one. Now, I personally look at that and go, there is no way. But if we could pinpoint that voter, and that voter could walk us through his or her logic and their reasoning, I'd be okay with it if it made sense. If they said go blue in your face, that wouldn't make sense and they wouldn't really deserve a vote. Jalen Milroe got 4 first-place votes. I wouldn't have voted Milroe number 1, number 2, or number 3, but if someone could walk me through their logic and it made sense and it was clear that they had taken time, done their due diligence, thought it through, and based on what they value, Milroe was number 1, that's cool. Never had a problem with that, never will have a problem with that. Believe it or not, in something as serious as college football even, reasonable minds can disagree. Here's what does bother me deeply. If your vote cannot withstand even mild critique, that bothers me. If I were to put you on the stand and you couldn't talk me through it, if I put you on the stand and you couldn't really even tell me a whole heck of a lot about the other finalists, that's a big problem, and you don't need to be voting on the Heisman Trophy. You don't need to be voting on a PTA election, for that matter. If you can't tell me about the field, if you can't walk me through to a logical conclusion on how you voted, you don't need to be voting. And secondly, the amount of voters, when we look at the Heisman Trophy, is absurd. It's insane. Do you understand that there are, I think at last check, there are 870 members of the esteemed college football or sporting media who vote on the Heisman Trophy? Whomst are we talking about? I go to the national championship game every year. That is the biggest media contingent that you'll see in this sport. There aren't 870 credentialed media at the national title game. Who are we talking about here? Now, I don't want to go single people out because there are a ton of people way more qualified than me and who have watched this sport longer than I've been alive, and I have immense amounts of respect for their acumen, both covering the sport and understanding the sport, but that's a case-by-case basis. The bottom line is, if we were to kick over the ant bed, that is the Heisman voter registry, there would be a lot of people who have no business on that list. None. And I am not going to take it upon myself to do that because I don't have access to that information. The Heisman folks do. And I doubt that they're going to release those roles anytime soon, because you would see that there are names there. It would be like basically in the movie Major League, when Rachel Phelps strips the entire team down, strips the payroll down, and she's trying to put together a team so bad that they'll finish last and they can move the team from Cleveland to Miami. And they're meeting in the front office there in January. And she says, here's a list of the players that we'll be inviting to spring training. I've never heard of most of these guys, and the ones I have heard of are well past their prime. And then some guy over in the corner says, this guy here is dead. I have a feeling if we looked at the Heisman voter rolls, it wouldn't be too dissimilar to the movie Major League. There are some names on there that don't need to be on there. And there's some names on there who really don't take their vote seriously. I'm going to suggest something, again, very radical here, but you're going to have to just follow me blindly, trust here. There are people who vote on the Heisman Trophy that don't watch a lot of college football. There are people who vote on the Heisman Trophy that don't necessarily care a great deal about college football. It may be their second, third, or fourth sport. And I lean in close for this one. There are people out of that 870, whomsoever they are, who vote on college football's most prestigious award, who don't have an ounce of love for college football. And you got a lot of folks out here who do, who have never sniffed a Heisman vote. I sound bitter. Let me backtrack. I don't have a Heisman vote, if you're wondering about that. I've never been, it's never bothered me I don't have one. It's bothered me a lot more knowing some of the folks who do have one. I would really love to condense that list. And listen, here's my proposal. I don't need to be a Heisman voter. I simply need to be the commissioner of college football. And when I am college football commissioner, I am going the total opposite way that I would go economically if I ran a state or a country. I'm nationalizing the voting process. And secondly, I am instituting what I would call an annual college football cognition test. And that is basically going to be required of every voter for every one of these awards. And if you can't pass it, you don't get a vote. And it could be a test that asks you questions that range from what is Arizona State's mascot to can you name 10 of the 14 offensive coordinators in the SEC? Anything and everything could be on the table. Basically, I need you to prove to me that you are intimately familiar with the sport, and I need you to prove to me in that given year that you've been paying attention. I know what happens most of the time. I go on the road every week. I go to a game every week. It is a chore to get back and then watch the games you missed. A lot of these folks are doing that. A lot of these folks work for a local beat, regional, national. A lot of these folks are at games. They see the game they go to. They see highlights of the other games. And by and large, they're not going back. It takes a lot of time to go back and watch games you missed on Saturday. It's hard enough to watch them all if you're plopped on a couch on Saturday. So, the voting process in general, like I look at Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the best receivers we've seen come through our game. He won the Biletnikoff Award. Marvin Harrison shouldn't have won the Biletnikoff Award this year. Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't the most outstanding wide receiver in college football this year. It's just that there are a ton of folks who voted on that award who couldn't even tell you who Malik Neighbors is, which is insane because Neighbors is a stud. But it goes to show you. I'm not even talking about digging into a depth chart, guys. I'm asking you to know the best wide receiver on one of the premier teams in the country, whose quarterback won the Heisman, by the way. So LSU it's not like this backwoods no-name program. The LSU Tigers, I believe most of you have heard of them. I got folks voting for the Biletnikoff who couldn't tell you anything about Malik Neighbors. That's a problem because he's a wide receiver, a really good one. And I got folks who vote for the best wide receiver in the country who couldn't tell you a whole lot about him. They know Marvin Harrison because Ohio State has done a heck of a job marketing and getting the name Marvin Harrison Jr. out there. Marvin Harrison Jr. has done a heck of a job with his play on the field, getting his name out there. This is not one of those, let me tear down the other guy to build up my guy. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a great player. He wasn't the best receiver in college football this year, but a great player. Now, maybe if I put him in LSU's offense, or maybe if I put Jaden Daniels in Columbus, Ohio, it would have been a different story. That's all part of it. I'm not here to knock Marvin Harrison Jr. Wonderful player. My point is, there are people who vote on this stuff that have no business voting on this stuff. And I think if you were provided a list, or you just observe the process, that a lot of these folks go through, the due diligence that is or isn't done, I think you'd probably agree with me. And I don't think a lot of you are shocked to hear this, by the way. I just think nationalizing this thing instead of sticking to the regional approach that we've had for like 800 years and requiring a basic college football cognition test to be passed for these folks to vote on this award would greatly alleviate a lot of this. Here's the third proposal. Just let Big Game Boomer put together a list of about 100 people and have them vote on it. The end. Big Game Boomer, Heisman Trophy voter roll. I think he'll be on it by tomorrow. And it'll be so colorful and probably a lot more appropriate than the current process.